So I don't want to rain on the drone parade, but take a slightly different view of things.
Whoa. Drivers. Sorry, what was I looking for?
Images.
See all your students' marks here.
Yeah.
This is from.
Oh, lots of images. No.
And there's one called Drone Fireball, I think.
Oh, you don't want all three of them?
Yeah, take all three.
We don't normally recruit our guest speakers to operate the computers, but we're grateful for that.
Oh, you want.
Anyway, so.
Look at that.
That's a bit small, but my focus was more on the regulatory side.
Yeah, let's do this.
There you go.
There we go. That can't be good.
So this was a shot of a more industrial drone, I guess, which was patrolling these windmills. And one of the things I noted about, particularly at the price point, was a lot of the drones are running in the 2.4 gig band, which of course is unlicensed, and that is going to be fraught with problems, I think, in terms of would it be easy to lose control if somebody lights up another a Wi-Fi signal? Well, sure. And true enough, they do all, if they're GPS controlled, they do have this return to home sort of thing, and they can park themselves. But that's based on ideal conditions. This particular one hit the blades and then exploded into fire. So I think as we move into the age of drones, which clearly we are, we have to separate the sort of RC or radio controlled environment, which Reed is so taken with, and go into the professional domain where we're really talking about devices which can broadcast on a licensed band, so we can actually get control of the drone and perhaps get the video back in real time in 1080p quality, maybe even 4K quality as we go along, but one step at a time. So if you go to the next slide, I went to a number of papers, and what's happening in the U.S., which I think is really interesting, is that they are very restrictive right now. There were some stories about FedEx wanting to pilot the business of delivering using drones, and they weren't able to do it in the U.S. They had to come to Canada to do their testing. I don't know if anybody's heard that rumor. But the U.S. is going to change radically, and by 2018, that marketplace is going to be a case of, rather than submitting a 333 exemption, which you have to do right now to fly a drone, you're likely going to have a pilot who goes for training and then ends up with a certificate. That certificate then would allow you to probably exceed the 2 kilogram weight, etc., and fly in GPS mode. And if you go to the last slide. So these guys, we're in San Diego, and they were employing some ex-fighter pilots that one of the guys had flown in the Gulf. So they're actually doing this now. They have a school which is called Drone University, if I recall correctly. And so that's their thing. They go through a course, and they're prepared to give you that certificate, which eventually is going to be required. So you can probably see where I'm going with this, that Loyalist College happens to have some acreage out the back, and it might be an ideal spot for doing the same thing in Canada. The Canadian regulations I haven't quite caught up with yet, but I've got some inquiries out there. So, and definitely the difference from last year to this year in drones is, have they come of age? Well, yeah, I saw one booth where for $1,000, show special mind you, you could get a drone that had multiple gyros, it had GPS connectivity, it had a remote panel that even Reed would approve of probably, because it had joysticks and everything on it. The thing is that that company also had simulators on the booth, so in terms of an educational environment, that would be ideal to have a simulator before you go and smash up some drones in the field. You might also wonder, what's the biggest market for drones today?
Real estate?
It's real estate. So apparently these things, and they were quoting numbers like $120 would get you 12 still images of your palace, assuming that you have a palace. And again, I think that market is going to mature by 2018. There was a young lady speaking on behalf of a law firm that they were actually doing work for the Obama government, and so they were crafting all of these policies that are about to hit the U.S. As far as the television market goes, I went to see the 8K display at NHK again with 22.2 sound. And what took me about it this year was, last year was more experimental. They were just throwing up a bunch of clips. This year it was nicely edited, and I thought it was much more professional, sort of announcing that, 8K is here. And on top of which, I had a long chat with a guy from NHK, and Japan's got these grandiose plans to saturate the country with 8K just before the Olympics happen. So I think by 2018 they wanted to be ready with 8K in Japan. So there's kind of a marker for you. Now, the Koreans, on the other hand, were taking the approach of, and they were going to broadcast over-the-air 4K, and they, by 2017, I think we're going to again saturate. It's a fairly small area to saturate, but they were going to go over-the-air terrestrial broadcast with 4K and do the entire country. So there are some initiatives out there. We can certainly watch them as they go forward. But clearly, both of those standards in North America are likely going to get delivered over IP if you look at all the available equipment out there. Likely the first person or the first company to deliver 4K is going to be Netflix. And why? Because they don't have the encumbrance of having set-top boxes. They can send, and it becomes your responsibility to have the right codec and the right computer. And if you don't have enough bandwidth, who are you going to complain to? It ain't Netflix. You're going to complain to your ISP because you can't get the signal smoothly. Right? So they have kind of the perfect business model in terms of they
Actually,
don't.
all of Netflix original production is now 4K, and they've actually been doing it since last April. The rumor is they're going to start charging a $3 premium for it.
Perfect. So that'll be our introduction.
Eric, also further to the 8K and HK, when I was speaking to them, they said they were going to have a 5-camera system in Vancouver for the FIFA Women's World Cup, that they'll be broadcasting live to the IBCC in Vancouver, as well as to locations in LA and New York as part of their test for this. So yeah, it's a little more mature than.
And does it all feel familiar? 5 years ago, this was 1080p we were
Yeah.
looking at, right? And here we are again. I really do think, though, that here we are chasing pixels again, when in fact the higher dynamic range may be a better way to go. And if you look at those pictures, they're absolutely stunning. So the idea of having more bit depth rather than more pixels, I think, has a lot of traction. And perhaps 4K with HDR is a better approach. Just my own opinion. I was also looking for, of all things, a backup means to get audio to an FM transmitter, as we kind of do everything at the college. And so I went and looked at Comrex and Tie-Line, and of course, the good news there is they're using AES 67, and the two boxes are actually compatible. If you pick one, you can receive it with the other one. The Tie-Line was a little more advanced in that it had an SD card slot, and you could load up a bunch of audio. So if you put that box at the transmitter and your STL went south, you could carry on playing stuff until you figured out what was wrong and how to fix it, which was kind of cool. So I thought all of that was pretty neat. Not only that, but from your smartphone, if you load up a free app like LinPhone, then those boxes would respond to a SIP protocol as well. And I know Ryerson had done a lot of work with your intercom and SIP packages, but now it's very mature, and this LinPhone package on your phone is free, which is nice. So that is really the perfect remote. The microphone manufacturers, Shure and Sennheiser, both had little attachments for the lightning adapter on an iOS phone, so you could get stereo audio from this little microphone at the bottom of your phone. So go to a remote with your iPhone and a little adapter, and you get stereo audio sent back over an IP to wherever you want it. Could be a broadcast situation as well. You could have it go to multiple places. Very cool. Speaking of cool, at the college, one of our staples is that students work with Raspberry Pi. They build some hardware, they write some software for it. And when I went to the ENCO booth, they had these little black boxes, and when you look closer, it was actually a Raspberry Pi 2. So they had this great scheme, which was their playlist. They were transmitting it via Raspberry Pi across a network connection to another Raspberry Pi, and on the other end then you could get the playlist and the video image, but they were also transferring the content required to keep the playlist running at a transmitter. So if the STL went away, really the playlist would just keep running for days in the background, depending on how big an SD memory card you put in the second Raspberry Pi. So I thought that was just cool. When you talk about $75 in hardware, we've got a pretty accomplished backup system. I thought that was just cool. In terms of test equipment, we went to Tektronix, and I was very happy to see that they are continuing on with file validation software. I think in a server-based world, it just makes sense to have a piece of software in the background checking your spots before they go to air, and Tech's doing a great job of that. The one thing I have to point out, though, is I don't know if you know Tony Zare, who was at Evertz before, has left Evertz and started a new company called Providius. And he's got just a dynamite little test package there, which he's developed. And if I were a mobile engineer, I think I'd have to have one of these things. Not only will it decode virtual any codec, but it'll handle ASI and any type of IP stream. It has a built-in spectrum analyzer. It just does everything. It's a wonderful box. And he was held up in the Ontario Pavilion. So, so for a startup, my hat's off to Tony. He's doing a great job. And I think that's about it for me.
Thanks, Eric. Over to Paul.